Welcome to the Caregiver Circle podcast, where caregivers connect, share, and feel seen. Join hosts McKevitt and Meredith Stewart each week for conversations, support, and encouragement designed to help you navigate the caregiving journey with confidence, compassion, and community. This is a space built for caregivers, one rooted in connection, understanding, and support. Welcome to the Caregiver Circle.
Welcome back to the Caregiver Circle.
Welcome.
Meredith, this is going to be a powerful episode. I know you and I have talked offline about this episode, and I'm actually thrilled that we get to do this. It's going to be about sharing the information we've learned on this caregiving journey to help others so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel like you and I have certainly discussed before, especially when they find themselves in the roles that we're in.
This is going to be great. We needed this a while ago, and so I'm excited to bring this to everybody else.
And without further ado, I want to welcome a friend, Michelle Hinojosa-Melencio, to the Caregiver Circle.
Hi.
Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Of course, we're happy to have you. And for our listeners, let me tell you about Michelle. Michelle is amazing. She and I worked together many, many years ago. We had a great working relationship. But like so many coworkers do, we went our separate ways. When my person was in the rehab and we were awaiting surgery, Michelle was going through her own struggles with her person and shared it on Facebook. And I remember just sitting back and I felt the need to reach out and just lend some support. And what's been really, really beautiful is that we've reconnected, we've stayed in constant contact. And I know I've personally learned several things from Michelle's experience. And that's the reason why I invited her to join our circle today. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
Michelle, do you want to share a little bit about your journey and where you are today? I know it's been an adventure for sure.
So I'm an elementary school educator. I'm a school librarian, and I was on winter break. And the night before I was getting ready to go back to school, my husband, Greg, had been complaining of a horrible headache. And he had been vomiting. I don't deal with vomit. He kept saying the right side of his head was hurting. And I had fell out in the parking lot with my dog the day before, and I had hurt the right side of my head to the point where I ended up with a black eye. And I just kept thinking, okay, Greg, here you go. I get a cough, you get a cough. I get a cold, you get a cold. I hurt the right side of my head. Now your right side of the head's hurting, except now you've got vomiting. But as I was getting ready to go to bed, he just was like, something's not right. He said, I really don't feel good. And I said, well, do you think we need to go to the hospital? And he was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, great, let's go. The hospital is like 5 minutes away from here. And then he said, I'm not going to make it. So that's when I said, I'm going to call 911. So they got here. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I woke her up, and we both followed the ambulance right down the street. They didn't let us to go see him for about an hour. When they finally did, they said he had a brain bleed and needed to be airlifted to Hopkins downtown. Seeing all that was a whole ordeal because he was obviously struggling. He was kind of in and out of like sleep. But then we saw the helicopter take him. I told my daughter, we need to go home and just sleep for a little bit. They're not going to let us see him right away when we get to Hopkins anyways. So we slept for a little bit. Then they called, said different surgeries that they were having to do. So anyways, we got to Hopkins, and that's when they said they had to do 2 life-saving surgeries on him. And when they used the word life-saving, that was very, like that hit me really hard. I was like, wow, like they needed to do this to save his life. They said he had had a cerebral hemorrhage. They had to do a craniectomy, which is removing a part of his skull from the back of his head, but they do not put it back. It's to help relieve the pressure. And then an EVD, don't ask me exactly what it stands for, extraventricular drain, I think. Some type of tubing put in where it helps drain out like the excess fluid because it can't drain out on its own. When we finally got to see him that day, he was intubated, had tons of tubes. My husband has always been very blessed with lots of hair. His head was completely just haphazardly shaved. And he was in a coma for a little over a month. 37 days is what I say. I would call him my sleeping beauty. It was a really, really hard time for my daughter and I. Every day it was something different. Our goal was to get to the point where when he was intubated, that they could give him a tracheostomy and a feeding tube. When we finally got there, which I think was February 3rd, February 4th, they finally got the surgery and woke up on February 9th. It is nothing like at all in the movies or on the TV shows where you wake up from a medically induced coma and you're just like, oh, what was going on? No, it's completely dragged on. He was in the NCCU, which was the neurocritical care unit, for 50 days. And then he went to a skilled nursing facility, or otherwise known as a nursing home. He was there for about a month, and I was on spring break. And when they were helping him get ready for PT and he was sitting up, I noticed the back of his head was very, very swollen. And I said, why does my husband's head look like that? They had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, my husband's head does not look like that. He had his craniectomy site had gotten infected. So back to the hospital, back to downtown Baltimore, was there for a little while. They got him decannulated where they were finally able to get rid of the trach. And then they sent him to Bayview where he did rehab there and was finally able to get off the peg tube. So overall, he had been away from home for 123 days from January the 5th, and he came home May 8th. But since then, he did have one more hospitalization last month in June for about a week. There's some kind of hiccups here and there, but that's his journey in a nutshell. It's still very, very raw.
And how have you handled all of this? Because I think as caretakers, we often sit here and focus on the person needing the care, but I want to flip the script a little because us caregivers, we need the support too. You're carrying the weight of all of that.
I think for me, therapy has been very helpful, sticking to therapy. That's a non-negotiable for me, therapy. I've been seeing a therapist for several years now. I think that honestly has helped save me. I really didn't realize how great of a community I had. In my community, I mean it like in a broader sense. There were so many people like who just sent like little like notes of love or just pinging me, and like that just meant so much to me. They're honestly the ones that help keep me afloat, because like to me, like by people reaching out to me, that showed that they care about me and my family. I also kind of got to see like who didn't reach out at all in those months. Nothing. And that hurt a lot. And it's very eye-opening. People that you thought would reach out and never did, but try to focus on those who did.
Michelle, that's such a huge story, and I know that weighs a lot on you, and you and I have certainly spoken about all of that. But one of the things that I found really interesting, and with this being our informative type of pillar for the Caregiver Circle, your journey while your husband was asleep, I think was actually very fascinating to me, not from the care side, but from the steps that you had to take. Do you care to share with us kind of some of those extra hurdles that you had just to become the caregiver that you are?
Yeah, so the social worker there was absolutely amazing. Her name was Amy. She came and visited us every day. And if I needed to call her or shoot her a quick email, like she'd pop in. She was very, very hands-on. And one of the first things she asked me was, did Greg have like any legal paperwork? And I said he had a will from 2007 when he deployed to Iraq because they made him do that. And she suggested that I apply for legal guardianship. She said, look, if you don't need it, you don't need it. She said, but I really think you should apply for it, get it in, and if you don't need it, well, that's great. So I had to petition the court to be legal guardian of his person and his property. We had to get two doctors to certify that Gregory was allegedly disabled. And this is like, from what I understand, it takes away all his basic rights, everything. You don't want to go this route. But we didn't know if he was going to cognitively be aware when he did wake up. They, like, it was like the unknown. So I got that paperwork in, and the court approved it, appointed him an attorney. And the attorney came to visit him just to make sure, everything was the way I said it was, and the doctor said the way it was. I applied for Social Security for him in February. I also applied for VA benefits for him because he does qualify, but being like legal guardian would help if they were not able to speak to him. Also, of his property, it would help for any accounts that he has on his own that I could access them. Most of our stuff is joint anyways, but like his property, car is only in his name. Like I thought, okay, if we have to sell the place, where we live, like we're both on it together, but how would I go about doing this? So it just covers everything. But I learned that I thought I had all my papers in order, and I didn't. I was like, oh, I've got a living will, I've got this, I've got that. I did not have a durable power of attorney. Now I do. But I learned that the durable power of attorney helps take care of all that if you're incapacitated. And I think, like, I never in a million years thought my husband would be incapacitated for almost over a month. And even past that, like his faculties weren't all there right away. But the durable power of attorney, I have that now. Once legal guardianship is terminated, we're going to get that for him. Actually, we just got to get everything done for him. And I know that that's a conversation that is way past due, but we need to have those conversations.
Well, and I think that's fascinating. And thank you for sharing all of those details, Michelle, because I know, at least for our own sakes, we have power of attorney. And I know even for my person to get that, it was, well, we're married, so we shouldn't need all of that. And after we've had the conversations, I've certainly Googled power of attorney. And what I have found, and I am not a legal expert, so please go see your legal person. Those are temporary. So a power of attorney will not help in a situation like yours, Michelle.
And I'm just thinking like how else I had to use it when I really didn't want to. So like for instance, when Greg was in the nursing home, they asked if he wanted to get all the shots. Like he needed all these shots. And he was like, no. And I was like, you need these shots. You're with all these other patients. I can't have you be at risk. And so I kind of had to put my foot down and say, this is where I'm going to override what you're saying right now. And I'm doing this because I love you. I'm not doing this to be mean, but you need all these different shots that they're going to give you. And I think that's the only time where we were not on the same page. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to call the shots on this one. Like literally call the shots on it for you to get these shots.
And you made me remember the same thing when we went into our first rehab. We had one that was very similar to what you've described. And I can't even remember the different classifications. I just know there are different types of rehabs out there. And absolutely, for us, it wasn't a negotiation. They required these. So with the exception of I think maybe the COVID shot because he was due for surgery. I think everything else was like a mandatory, you are doing this. There was no negotiation. It was just sign here and here's the needle. Like it was that quick for us. Meredith, did you have any experiences like that when your mom was in the rehabs?
The only time I had to really make the decisions was in the very beginning after she broke her neck, because I had to sign off for her to have surgery. She didn't even know any of that was going on. And then made a lot of decisions and had the conversations early on. That lasted a few months. But since then, she's been able to make her own decisions. Sometimes I have to encourage her to make what I think is in her best interest decisions, but she makes them herself now. I know it's so different from at home than it is in the hospital or the nursing home. Is there anything you wished you knew that first day you came home that nobody warned you about or told you about?
Honestly, how overwhelming all these appointments were going to be.
Oh, yeah.
We live by the calendar, but every day there's some type of an appointment. Like, for instance, when possible, I try to do PT and OT together for him because that's just one straight visit. He doesn't like when I do that. Like, I get it. I know you're tired, but it's easier for me. I know it's a little bit harder on him, so I kind of have to tell him, I need you to work with me. I know like you're doing hard work, but I also need the breaks here and there where I'm not driving all over the place everywhere. But, right now it's just all the different appointments that we're trying to get taken care of.
There's a lot early on. You just find yourself coming and going. I got lucky with that, and they did home health for my mom. I don't know what I would have done if they hadn't, with all the different therapies and appointments.
Michelle, were there resources you didn't know that had existed until much later in this process? I know you're still kind of in the spring season of caregiving, as I like to call it. So you're still kind of figuring out what the routines are. And I know it's not easy. So is there something that's automatically, I wish I had known this back when he first came home?
The insurance has a nurse who calls once a week, kind of like a care management system. And she's been really helpful. About 2 weeks ago, we went to go window shopping for a motorized wheelchair. I was like, Greg, let's just go check it out. We're not going to buy anything. We're just going to look. Because my husband uses a walker, but he gets very, very, very tired. And we actually walked out with a motorized wheelchair that day. The first question I asked wasn't even how much is it? It was how much does it weigh? Because using a manual wheelchair, it was really hard on me as his caregiver, pushing the manual wheelchair, picking it up and putting it in the car. We had gone to a plant nursery to go look at plants and just trying to push him on the gravel. It was a lot, trying to push him up a little hill into one of the greenhouses. I know I'm out of shape, but this is a lot for me. And so this motorized wheelchair, it has been a godsend. And it was a little bit more than $3,000, but this care management nurse had told me that I didn't even know that it would be covered by insurance. I was like, really? I had no idea. So she's working with me and she was like, let me make this phone call and find out for you how we can get you reimbursed for this. And she was like, look, even if we can't get 100%, if it's some of it, and I'm like, hey, if I can get $500 reimbursed, I'll be happy with that. So that I'm really grateful for her just kind of helping me with things that I'm not even really thinking about right now because my mind's in a million places right now. And I honestly thought I would have to pay for this out of pocket because to them, it's like, does he really need this motorized wheelchair? We gave him a walker, but it's making his quality of life so much easier. It's making my quality of life easier.
Meredith, did you have any challenges when you were dealing with insurance and everything with mom, or were you able to kind of navigate it in an easier fashion?
I got lucky because she's on Medicare. So they took care of a lot of things, but they start you out with the basics, kind of like you were talking with the insurance company. So we started with the manual wheelchair. And then luckily, the therapists that were coming to the house said, no, it's time she needs an electric wheelchair, which has given her, she hated it in the beginning, but it's given her a lot of independence back. A Hoyer lift, they give you the crank it up. So we eventually bought ourselves an electric one. Well, now we've had one put in the ceiling because as time goes on, your lifts aren't easy to use. I mean, not on the patient or the caregiver by any means. But it's just those little things. Putting the Hoyer lift in the ceiling has been huge. Next, I want to put more tracking in so that I don't even have to put her in a chair to get her into the bathroom. We can just track her straight to the bathroom or into the living room to a chair that she can sit in. It's those little things that along the way you learn that it may end up costing you, but just like Michelle was saying, it's so much easier on the caregiver just to go ahead, and it's well worth the money. It just takes some time sometimes to be able to get it exactly how you want it. It's been several years, so we've had to upgrade some things along the way, but we got lucky. For the most part, the therapists that were coming in made sure that insurance and Medicare were paying what she needed.
It's interesting listening to the differences in our journeys and then the similarities where my family doesn't benefit of a Hoyer lift. I can still envision uses of them for others. And I immediately went into putting safety railings in our house. So one week it was, call the handyman and put them in the 2 bathrooms. A week or 2 later, it was, oh, now we need handrails up to our bedroom floor because one wasn't enough. And it's very interesting to see how the circumstances we all find ourselves in immediately turns to renovating a home. And it's kind of crazy to kind of sit there and think about it. Our favorite movie is Disney's Up, and I call my loved one Mr. Fredrickson sometimes because that's kind of what I envision when I'm looking at the handrails or, the canes and all that stuff. So we kind of come to it with a little bit of a humor, but I think that's also our love of dogs.
I was going to say, you just made me think, like before Greg came home, I called the handyman and I had bidets installed. I also had the shower head changed where it was like a dual shower head, one of them you can remove and just kind of shower yourself. But yeah, even those little small things, that make somebody's life a little bit easier help.
Yeah, we renovated our bathroom. We took out the tub and just made sure that it was a stand-up shower, and I was very lucky. Our consultant who came in from the company, one of the things that I never thought of was don't put a shower door. And, in my mind, how are we going to do this? I'm going to have water all over the floor. And something as simple as a weighted shower curtain is what he recommended. And when he explained that it was really in case my loved one fell, how are we going to navigate around a shower door, a chair, and all these other items? And it has been a blessing in disguise, I'll tell you, especially in the early days when you're caring for your loved one and bathing them. How are we going to, work around? I can't even think about how I would be working around a glass door. I really don't.
Right. We had to remodel a lot in order for her to be able to get through doors and things like that. And we put in a walk-in shower. We call it a roll-in shower because we can just roll her right in and shower her. But the bathroom sink, we just put in one on the wall to where she's able to slide under it. We put in the faucets where with the wave of her hand, because she can't reach the handles, we had to put in double doors to the front door. So it's just those little things along the way that you're like, oh, well, this makes sense. Let's put this in that you never think about until you're in this situation. And then you're like, we put in double doors. We moved moved her bedroom. We built her bedroom off of the living room. So she's right here, bathroom, bedroom, living room, kitchen, all right there together. Just those little things that they make life easier for the caregiver and the person. So
I feel like as we're talking, like there's a mental checklist for someone with mobility issues. Check, check, check. Michelle, what other items have you put in your house that have definitely helped life get navigated a little easier?
We did get a new bed. Honestly, our bed before was just a mattress on the floor because that's just the way we were. It was like a queen size mattress on the floor, no frame or anything like that. But we did splurge a little bit, like on a Tempur-Pedic bed that can kind of move up and down a little bit. And now it's a king size bed because it has got to make room for our pug, our dog, Cece. But that was one of the big ones that we did.
Absolutely. I think bed height is actually really something important to focus on. I'm kind of envisioning, Michelle, how Greg would have navigated if you hadn't changed it. And I don't think he would have been doing much more than sleeping on the couch. Thinking about our journeys, renovating our homes is something we're learning around the way, but is there some item or something that you've gone to that has really helped support you in this journey? A website, a book, anything that you kind of hold on to and say, thank God I had blank.
for me, it's been social media, only because there's been so many times that I've gotten worried that, is this supposed to be like this, or is this normal? And I can be in spinal cord injury groups and ask a question if I need to, or a lot of times somebody's already discussed it. I'm more of a read on social media, but there's been times that I've definitely asked questions because they're living it. And many of them have been living it for way more years than my mom. So that has helped me. How about you guys?
I haven't reached out yet. With Greg's last hospitalization, a community health nurse has been calling every week, and they'll do that for up to a month. And they told me that my county offers caregiving resources. They'll even offer grant money for the caregiver themselves, which I would love to learn more about. And the nurse had told me, this grant, it's for you on however you decide you want to use it, like for caregiving. But then I'm thinking, I don't even know how I would use it. And I've been meaning like to call the lady to ask how have people used this in the past, because maybe there's something like I just haven't even thought of yet. Yesterday, for the first time, we went to a stroke survivor support group meeting at the hospital. It was definitely something I needed. Caregivers were welcome. My husband wanted to leave within the first 5 minutes because he got really upset, just a lot of feelings. But I was like, let's just try to, I know you're not comfortable. Let's try to sit through that discomfort, unfortunately, and maybe you'll be okay. And he was. It was just there was a lot of feelings. And hearing everybody else's story, I think kind of helped both of us. But I think for me, just having that contact with other people is what's going to be very useful. And I've already got on my calendar the second Thursday of the month, at the hospital down the road, that they have a support group meeting. So,
Michelle, I'm so glad that you're encouraging him to do it, but also doing it for you. I think that's just beautiful. I think that's a great way to make sure that you're not alone. And I'm glad you found those community resources. I know for myself, I'm similar to Meredith with the social media, but having taken the grief educator course when I did was a blessing in disguise, because I trained with David Kessler, who's a well-known grief educator, and he had had a conversation with Emma Hemming Willis, Bruce Willis's wife, who's now helping him navigate his, I'll call it dementia. I don't remember what the actual thing is. And what's great is she's actually become quite a hero to me. And she's the reason why I use my person instead of my spouse. I think it allows other people to put themselves in my shoes and to understand that just because this happened with my spouse doesn't mean this couldn't happen with a child, a parent, another loved one. And by watching the way she speaks and advocates, not just only for her own family, but for other caregivers, it's been really, really motivating to me, which is why we're sitting here having these conversations. She wrote a book also on caregivers, and I literally just checked it out of the library yesterday. So hopefully in one of our upcoming episodes, I'll be able to sit there and tell you more about it. But I think what's really inspiring is to have someone who is also in the same boat as us, raising families, working, and thinking they had a life very, very different to what it ended up being. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I think just having someone turn their heartache and make it into a purpose, I think that's kind of where I aligned the most.
That's gonna make me cry.
I was thinking the same thing too. This is why I have you ladies here today. So I really love that we're sharing our knowledge, and I really recognize that all of our situations couldn't be more different, but yet we still are really kind of navigating a lot of the same feelings and whatnot. What leaves you the most overwhelmed at the end of the day?
For me, it's the emotional side of things. You can teach me how to take care of her, but emotionally, nobody warned me about that.
I think for me, it's the physical, and I'll share why it's not the emotional this year. So last year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I am in remission. And then this with my husband, and then also my daughter has a lot of mental health struggles. So I feel like emotionally, I've been depleted, if that makes any sense. But physically, it's been a lot. I don't even want to go on walks anymore because I already know like I'm losing weight without even trying. There's just a lot of physical part. Like I I don't have the strength. I don't think I have the strength the way I'd like to. The physical part is very draining on me right now.
Michelle, I remember those early days. I'm 6 years in, but oh my gosh, I remember those early days. It's tough.
And no one prepares you for life as you have it today. And then on top of it, taking care of another grown human being. And you're taking on the role of potentially three different people on top of the roles that you already have in life. And it's hard to recognize and accept that this is what life looks like for some unknown period of time. So I want to recognize everything that you all are doing, that our listeners are doing. It's not easy to be in these roles, and it's okay to have your down moments.
I was just thinking about what somebody said at the support group I attended yesterday, and he was a gentleman who had a stroke in 2001. And he was like, look, it's 25 years later, but it was still very much affected him to this day. And he had said it didn't just affect him, it affected everybody in his circle. It affected his family, his friends, his community. And it just made me think, because like my husband, like I know he's going through this. Um, and I kind of have to remind him sometimes gently that, hey, I'm also going through something too. Like, I love you very much, and I don't want to see you hurting like this or be upset but we're in this together, we're in this together.
I love that, Michelle. I have similar conversations in our house, and it is something you're going through together for sure. And caregiving is 100% done out of love. And It's hard being in the care recipient's chair because their life looks completely different to what it looked like once before. But it's a little harder to recognize what we as caregivers are doing. So that's also another reason why I want to spend the time and recognize those of us that are here and they're doing the hard work and holding on the feelings and the emotions. It's definitely not easy. But one of the things I have to say is this was a very, very powerful discussion. You ladies are amazing. Michelle Hinojosa-Melencio, thank you for sharing your story. And Meredith, I'll leave it to you.
Well, it's been another good week. I think to close out, let's just kind of remember everything that we've just learned today. And Michelle, you had some great information on things that I would never even have thought that you needed to have. So caregivers, just remember that you don't need to know everything. You just really need to know where to find the next piece of information when you need it. The information won't eliminate the challenge. The challenge will still be there, but it can reduce fear, increase confidence, and just remind us that we're not navigating this journey alone.
Well, until next time, take care of yourself while caring for others. And remember, you're never alone in the Caregiver Circle.
The Caregiver Circle is a podcast of two friends providing a place for connection, education, encouragement, and shared experiences. As caregivers, advocates, and lifelong learners, we share stories, resources, and conversations that have helped us along the way, with the hope that they may help you too. While we strive to share helpful information, the content of this podcast is not intended to replace professional medical, legal, financial, or mental health advice. Please consult qualified professionals regarding your specific situation and needs.